Hi, welcome everyone for tuning in. My name is Regina Leung, Director of the VAFF Industry Program. So we begin by acknowledging the land that we are broadcasting from is the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, First Nations, as well as the Mississauga of the Credit, the 𝗖𝗿𝗍𝗍𝗂𝘃𝗍𝗍, the 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗏, the 𝗘𝗅𝗲𝗶𝗍𝗂𝘃, and the Wingdam peoples. So, welcome everyone. This is January. Happy New Year. And now we finished our 25th year of our Vancouver Asian Film Festival. And so this project, with this program, we launched it in December of last year. And with generous support from Bell Media to provide us $15,000 for this series development funding to assist talented Asian Canadian filmmakers and TV producers to create projects to raise the profile of Asian in Canada, and also give you opportunity to develop your works for potential TV series productions. So this is the info session about this projects, this program, and we'll also like to introduce our guest presenter today to talk about the insights of what Bell Media looking for and all the information that we can go through it if you guys have any questions. And so we have here today is Caroline Wu, production executive in script original programming from Bell Media. And as a production executive in script original programming, Caroline Wu, them works with the development team to develop script contents for CTV, Crave, and the entertainment specializing channels of Bell Media. They collaborate with independent productions, partners, writers, and creators to develop a slate of scripted projects that are diverse, culturally relevant to Canadians, and specific to the programming needs of the individual channels and services. So now we're welcoming Caroline. You're mute.
Yeah, we're good. Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep, it's awesome. Cool.
Great. Yes, thank you so much for hosting, and happy to be here and chat with you all about this awesome new program that we are launching with VAFF. So, Regina, should I just take it away, or did you?
Yeah, feel free to take it away.
Okay, awesome. So I'm a production executive, development executive, whatever you want to call me. I guess development executive feels a little bit more accurate these days. And I work here at Bell Media. Here is in from my office at home at Bell Media. And yeah, I've been in this role for just under 6 months, so still very new. But I'm really, hi, thank you for saying hello in the chat. I can't see you, so it's really great to feel you here in the chat, so please feel free to say hi. Yeah, I've been a development executive for just under 6 months, and my job is to pretty much take pitches and develop content for our platforms, as Regina mentioned. And yeah, so we have this new, really exciting program with VAFF. I'm a big fan of VAFF myself and screened my short, the premiere of my own short film there. Hello. Thank you all for saying hi. So big fan of VAFF. And so we wanted to launch this program with them to really discover new talent. I guess that's pretty much all it is. And so I'd say there's a lot of kind of misconceptions about development, about TV series development. What does that mean? And like, what does it look like in Canada? So I'm really here to answer any questions about that and talk about how this program is gonna work. So I'll just walk through the application process a little bit. So we are going to be giving $15,000 in series development funding. And so what that means is you'll be getting a development deal with us through applying through these by submitting the materials that we are requesting, which I'll go through in a minute. And essentially what a development deal means is that we will look at what you submit, look at your series concept, your series idea, your pilot, your whatever you're presenting to us, and we will evaluate it as potential series for one of our platforms. And so basically what happens across all of the broadcasters is that we have a certain amount of projects in development, and then of those projects, a certain number of those would then go to production. But you know, it is we do a lot of strictly development work. So I'm a development executive. I'm not so much on the production side of things, and I work under 𝗖𝗿cie𝗹𝘆𝘂𝗰𝗁𝗁, who is the head of development, and there's my coworker 𝗖𝗿ecie𝗹𝘆𝘁𝗶𝘃𝗰, and the three of us kind of cover scripted development. So Allison works with my other coworker 𝗘𝗅𝗲𝗰𝗂𝗁𝗁 on unscripted. So any folks here who are more on the unscripted side, I'm sure that Regina can pass my email, or we can pass it at the end. I can connect you with folks on the unscripted side if you have any questions about series development for unscripted. But for me, I work exclusively in scripted. And so hopefully everybody here is also interested in scripted. And so the process is that you would go through a development with us. And so what a development means would therefore include delivery of an outline with various drafts. And hi, Theo. And an outline with various drafts, and then a pilot with various drafts, and then sometimes a second episode. So a 101 and a 102, and potentially a Bible. So we would decide what those deliverables would be once that the project is chosen, like what deliverables make sense. It really varies project to project. And then at the end of the development deal, then we bring it to programming, and then they will evaluate whether or not it would be meant for production. So that's pretty much how it works. My job is to, again, like I mentioned, take pitches and bring forward to my team the best series ideas that I think have the best potential. Then also, we also, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. So my job is to give notes. So I also do a lot in terms of like, we get the drafts back, and then so like say you have gone off and done your first draft of your first outline, which would probably be the first deliverable that you would turn around to us, and then we as a team would come together, look at that outline, and then I would give you the notes on that. Sometimes I work a little bit closer with the writers depending on what the nature of that particular production is. We have some great questions, so I can just tackle these right now. So Gabriel is asking, do VAFF and 𝗘𝗏 become the parent, partner, or supervisor of the selected production? So you would maintain ownership over your own IP. So as far as depending on if you are a writer-producer. So if you're coming in with like as a writer-producer, like with a producer attached, then we would evaluate that as a team. If you're coming in writer only, then we would have kind of be the as a writer only development, which we do. Like a lot of times folks ask us if they need to have a big production company attached to their project when they come to pitch us, and the answer is no, you don't need to. Sometimes it helps a lot, but essentially you don't need to have a production company attached. But we would own the rights to the IP during that time that you're developing with us, and then if we don't choose to go through to production, then we would release the rights to the IP. Which is kind of typical for development. And then if we did go on to production, then typically a production partner would come in, and then we would hammer out the deals, the numbers for the deal. So yeah, if that makes sense. So does that answer? Let me know if that answers your question, Gabriel. Alex, any particular genre? We don't. I mean, I guess right now there is a little bit more of an emphasis on comedy. So there is a big kind of gap in terms of, especially for racialized creators, to be able to access support and resources and feedback and all of that kind of, all of those resources for comedy. So we see that for sure. So I would say there's a slight preference for comedy right now, but I wouldn't, just because we really want to incubate comedic talent, especially from racialized creators right now. But other than that, we are not specifically looking for any type of genre. I will say that if you are looking to pitch for 𝗘𝗲𝗃, I can walk through sort of the differences between CTV and 𝗘𝗃 in a second. But basically, if you're pitching for 𝗘𝗃, it is a totally new ball game. You guys are all seeing what is popular, what's among the other streamers, and this is a really new territory for this country. Essentially, we are one of we do look for premium content, and what that means to us is that it kind of has to sit alongside HBO Max, our partners in HBO Max on 𝗘𝗃. But I mean, as far as premium content, that really just means stuff that's like really character driven and has a little bit of that cinematic kind of feel, and especially for 𝗘𝗃 is serialized. So those are kind of the criteria for 𝗘𝗃. But as far as genre, that's more like format and structure. As far as genre, things are pretty wide open. If you're pitching for CTV, we do take a lot of pitches for procedurals, and really just anything that's more episodic. We try to stray away from using the word procedurals, say more episodic content in nature. That's stuff that's highly repeatable. But that doesn't really, I don't need to get into that too much just because your question is around genre. But yeah, we do look for those 1 hour repeatable dramas. So yeah, we do take everything across, like, comedy dramas. I guess we don't take as many like YA type pitches. Dark comedy, yes, absolutely. We don't take as many sketch as we don't really have a, I'd say sketch comedy is a little bit of a harder internal sell. But other than that, like, it's pretty open. It's pretty open in that sense as far as genre. So one of the other questions, sorry, let me just make sure. I'm going to go through the deliverables, so don't worry about that. I'll go through that in a second. How do we choose a production partner? That is really, it's hard. It really depends. It really depends. We don't necessarily choose per se. Like, we collaborate with you, the writer, to choose who makes sense. So sometimes it's based on their production companies, like past works, and seeing like, oh, they know how to execute this type of show really well, then we'll go to them. Or they know how to do a half-hour comedy really well, or this other production company knows how to do, like, competition shows really well. It really depends. So there's nothing, I mean, ideally, I'd say like most of the pitches that we get, there is already production partners attached. But for those that don't, it is kind of just about that's the story, and that the story speaks for itself. So yeah. Sorry, Regina, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Sure.
Help you out for some of the questions. But before we go through, like, all the requirements, because some of them is the prelim, right? So do you want to just tell them a little bit about the difference from the 𝗘𝗃 and the and then they can get the idea of that first. Yeah.
Yes, no problem. So so the difference between 𝗘𝗃 and CTV. Okay, 1 second. So like I mentioned, for 𝗘𝗃, like, we have a mandate to, we are a very commercially driven corporation. And so what that means is that we do have a mandate to drive subscribers and drive subscriptions. And so what that means is that, we want to make sure that we're staying attuned to what everyone else is watching, what everyone else is really interested in. And as you guys know, it's just really open right now. There's Successions and the White Lotuses of the world, Mayor of Easttowns, you know, across all of this content, you know, there's no bounds, you know, everybody's kind of watching everything. So really for us, we're just really looking for stuff that is really serialized and binge worthy. I would say that again, like there's less of an emphasis on YA, on short form content. Like I'd say for comedies, we'd be looking at like 22 minutes or to half an hour. And for our dramas, 45 to an hour. Did I say 22 minutes to half an hour? I hope I said that right. And less of an emphasis on period stuff as well. But other than that, everything else is we're really just focused on what's called premium content. But really, to me, that really just means like character-driven stuff. And so for CTV, it's really different. Like really, the demands for linear are just very different, which means that stuff would have a little bit more of a broad appeal, and looking for stuff that can appeal to the whole country in a primetime slot. So that means half-hour sitcoms, maybe workplace comedies, family comedies. Sometimes they might have a big talent attached. It's really your kind of 25 to 54, your blue sky programming. And at the end of the day, if it feels episodic in nature, then it's probably more a better fit for CTV.
So, great, fantastic. So that's few of the, you answered probably a couple of the questions already. That's one, say, the dark comedy. Will that be something?
Yeah, we could dark comedies for Crave. Yeah, absolutely. I'd say more for Crave, but yeah, absolutely. And so for TV crime or drama, I mean, depending on, is it crime drama like The Wire, or crime drama like procedural? Like those would be very different. So it depends on the structure of that type of show. So for period drama, like I mentioned, we don't do as much period stuff, but you never know. So again, we really don't like to close ourselves off to any type of option. So happy to hear the pitch, and like if you want to get a temperature check from me, happy to set up a coffee Zoom chat, and we can chat about it. We don't typically do as many period dramas, but you never know. With the right take, we can see what's possible. Having a producer could help a lot. Should we now work hard to get a producer attached to our application? If you are, okay, so it's a really good question. If you are a writer, if the majority of the folks here watching are writers, I would say to focus more on your writing rather than finding a producer. A producer can help a lot, I think, maybe outside of this program. But given that there's this kind of opportunity right here for this particular application, then I think that I would focus more on just making the writing in your application just really concise. And we're going to talk about how to make a really solid application in a minute. And I think outside of the program, in terms of just pitching to a broadcaster, then having a producer attached can help a lot. Just in terms of there's certain production companies who have been around for a long time, and we have longstanding relationships with them. And sometimes, so if you're coming with one of those production companies, then that can help for sure, because there's just an established kind of relationship there. But I think a lot of the time, if it's not one of those bigger companies, like a really good idea can really stand out on its own. And I also want to say that for a lot of folks who are a little bit newer to writing and wanting to get into series, there's a lot of producers who are looking for racialized content, and just to be careful about not just signing away your IP so quickly, because oftentimes, sometimes a producer can help a lot. It really depends on the type of producer that you're coming in with. So, because that producing partner, I would urge everyone to just make sure that you're asking yourselves a lot of questions about that relationship with that partner, how well you trust that that person or that team, and make sure that they're the right people to be able to execute your idea in the long term. You know, do they have sort of a track record that you trust? You know, just make sure that there's somebody that you have a really solid relationship with if you want them as your producer, just because there is just, I see it a lot every day, and I worry about some folks kind of just signing away their IP a little bit too quickly. So, you know, anyways, I just wanted to flag that. So I don't want there to be like a really big rush to find a producer right away. I would say definitely focus on the writing of your application. So we'll talk about that in a second. So period stuff I mentioned. Preference for hour-longs or half hours. It depends on genre. You know, I would say that I guess also we're all kind of in an age where genre bending is happening a lot, as I'm sure you're all seeing. So there isn't really a preference for half hours or hours in a more general sense, but I'd say comedies are more half hour. Like if they're always leaning a little bit more comedy, they're usually going to be more half hour. And if they're like serialized drama, that would be like an hour. So that would be, but there's no preference kind of overall. Restrictions as far as network standards, language and content. Would adult-oriented animated comedy drama be too out of the box? So great question. Again, so I just really want to underline the differences between CTV and Crave. You're probably hearing a lot of talk sort of larger in the industry about, oh, like this producer knows how to pitch to broadcasters. And I want to make it clear that just to be careful not to look at all broadcasters in the same way, and make sure you really know those broadcasters' platforms, right? So for us, I want to really emphasize the difference between CTV and Crave, because a lot of times we get pitches that are really great, but they're a little bit CTV and a little bit Crave, and it doesn't feel like a really great sell internally. And I say sell internally just because that's essentially what the process is that, say I really like your project, and then I have to just make sure that I have the right language to be able to share about that project internally with our programming team. So it is kind of a longer process. So anyways, so coming back to your question, if you're pitching for Crave, that's content that's more adult. See, this is also very exciting because Canada's never really done adult content, like really, really adult content. So now it's like we're definitely looking for Crave. So if you're pitching in adult, you know, animated comedy for Crave, then that could be a really good fit. So yeah, because we don't have any restrictions around language and content. Can we have an individual production partner? I'm not sure if I understand what your question is. Do you mean like individual as in like one producer? Yeah, if so, then yes, absolutely. You can have just one producer as your like this person that like pitches two people. So one person is your writer and one person is your producer. You could totally do that.
Yeah, at the applicants that we mentioned that they can be an independent producer who are individual or co-venture or corporate. So, and it's really up to you guys how you like to decide it. So next one, that is something that asking about short films, and this particular program is for TV series production. But for Belle, and I will let Caroline to take it if they have other than this.
Yeah, no, I mean, so when we get into the application process, we do accept shorts as like an example of your previous work, but no, we don't develop short films. So I'm a development executive and who works strictly in scripted development, and we do not develop short films. It's not sort of, I only develop series. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Is there a topic that could be censored? I'm not sure what you mean. So feel free to describe more. Okay, next question. says, showcase a story with protagonists of Asian descent. Does it have to say true to that 100%? Can the story and character be Asian American? Yes, they can be Asian American. There's a little bit of leeway there. I will say that because of a lot of reasons, which I don't even know the full details of, because of a lot of reasons, as far as what might be helpful for everyone to know is that it's helpful to work with Canadians, like just like folks with Canadian citizenship. I know or PR, just because it's really a frustrating system. I'm myself am frustrated with it, just because there is a really big emphasis on, like, with the larger funding bodies, to work with Canadian content. So bringing in American producers and stuff, it totally does happen down the line. I'd say bringing in American partners down the line totally does happen. But I would say that during these initial stages of development, that sticking with Canadian writers, Canadian producers, like that Canadian talent is really our focus. But as far as like with it, I mean, if you're thinking of like within your project, like within the story that you're going to kind of go to the States, that if you mean like like you're going to shoot it there in some way, sometimes, because another recurring question that we ask ourselves when we take pitches is why us, right? Like why is Crave a good fit? Why is CTV a good fit? And usually that, and a lot of time that comes down to the fact that, does it feel really Canadian? So it's just something to think about. I'm not saying it's definitely cannot, like, absolutely. We will, a good story is a good story no matter what. But I just wanted to say that there's a little bit of a preference there. Is there a limit on our eligibility if we're in development with another network? I would say, sorry, I need to think about this for a second. If you're in development with another network, I would clarify with who you're working with at that network that they want you to go to the other networks to pitch and co-develop. If they are open to you co-developing with another network, it really depends on which network. But I would say there isn't a limit. I would definitely say in your application that you are already in development with another network. I wouldn't say it would necessarily help or hinder, if that makes sense. Cool. Are you able to list the productions companies that you prefer to work with? I don't think I can, but it would be really easy to find if you look at I can tell you kind of who our big shows are. So some of our big shows are like Letterkenny and Transplant and Children When Everything just came out. So if you kind of look at our original productions and see who we've worked with in the past, then you can see who we kind of already have relationships with, if that makes sense. Canada's Drag Race is also another one of ours. Like, even if we have relationship in the unscripted world, that often translates into scripted as well. Yeah. I know help writers out. Alternatives to written applications. Oh, interesting. This is a really great question. Let's talk about it. I hadn't thought of this. Even as someone who's neurodivergent, I think that we totally should talk about this. I will say that if written, I guess we can totally do a verbal pitch if that's because typically we do a verbal pitch and there's materials. We do both. It does help to have materials because we share those materials internally. So maybe a video pitch, we can totally talk about that. So thank you for asking that, and we can, super happy to have that conversation.
Next one.
Limited series project be eligible? Great question. This is a really great question. Would a limited series project be eligible, or are you only looking for projects that have potential for multiple seasons? There is actually a a little bit of a preference for limited series right now. So we're open to both, but I would say it's, again, doesn't help or hinder. Like, you know, well, I guess it helps a little bit. I guess it helps a little bit to be limited a little bit, but I wouldn't say it's not a really strong determining factor for us. But if you see it as kind of like, oh, what's a limited series? I guess 𝗲𝗏 Easttown is kind of, I don't know if they're doing a season 2, but anyways, it's kind of like a very 𝗲𝗏 Easttown, if you've seen it, is a very self-contained like murder mystery. Like there's a top and a tail. Like there's 10 episodes and it has a nice conclusion. You can see there's potential. I think that there is talks for season 2. Like there's potential for season 2. Like you can see how that could happen. But when you watch the end of 𝗲𝗏 Easttown, you're like, it's over. Like they, you know, that it's just kind of done. So that is our ideal, is that we can see potential for more, but there is a nice kind of like close-endedness. And I would say maybe more that's kind of me in like crave drama brain. If you're talking more around crave dramas, or I'd say comedy dramas. Yeah. Okay, high-end cinematic documentary series is similar to Chef's Table and are multicultural. Great question. So I just mentioned at the beginning that I am strictly on the scripted side of things. So I don't actually work in unscripted as of yet. Well, I do take the odd unscripted pitch, but largely I don't really work in unscripted. So I'm super happy to connect you with my unscripted colleagues. So Heather Williamson and Alison Rayom, who do work in developing unscripted projects. So happy to connect you with those folks to set up a pitch, or if you want to chat with me about the process beforehand, we can totally do a Zoom. So cool. What are steps to applying? Well, great question. We're going to get into that in a second. I don't see any other. Okay, so how high a priority is an Asian Canadian artist and story at the center of this? Imagining a team with an Asian Canadian protagonist, writer, director, composer, but hoping to have broader diversity to a larger cast. And in creating sci-fi, not necessarily having Asian Canadian identity and ethnographics at the heart of the story. Does this align with your priorities? Yeah, like we're not, how can I put it? It's like, in terms of like the Canada-ness of it, like it's more that you, the creator, is Canadian. If any partners are involved at this very, very early stage, like ideally they're Canadian. Like it's not like we really need it to be like, okay, it's just so specific to an Asian Canadian. It doesn't necessarily have to be so, I guess in my work, I'm not like, actually that's totally a lie. I totally made a film about hockey. So I'm just like lying on my ass. So I totally made a film about Asian Canadian experience, but I guess I was thinking about it. Like when I think about my future work, it's not just like so specific to like, it's about an Asian Canadian, but it could take place in, you know, San Francisco, and that would totally be cool. So I hope that answers your question. Like it's not so prescriptive. It's not so, it's not, like, I think ultimately, as long as we can answer the question after hearing your pitch or reading your materials, as long as we can answer, like, why us? Like, why does this make sense for us to do versus any of the other networks? Then that's it. Like, we just need to be able to answer that question. I hope that answers your question. So I apologize if not.
Okay, so just follow up. There's a different question here.
Is English the only language? No. We do hear pitches. I'm sorry. We do see scripts with multiple languages in them. I'd say now more than ever, there's more of a drive for like kind of more of a need, and we hear the need for all kinds of languages in our content. So I think like. Oh, I see. I'm so sorry. So maybe that's better for the larger group to hear. Like we do, like usually the script itself does have to be in English because we have to be able to read it, and we're all English speakers. So yeah. But a lot of times, like we'll read a whole script, but like 50% of it will be like, you know, in Cantonese. Like the following dialogue is going to be in Cantonese, and it's like literally like half a script, and like that's totally fine. Yeah. I mean, that's not just like there. I'd say that there is more openness to that than there ever was before. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So we can go back to some of those previous questions about like the
Application.
applications, the material for that, and let me just kind of go through a few things in our end, right? The basic application that what we are looking for, besides you complete your your application form, and then with that 1 to 2 pages documents that we're looking for is pretty standard. You talk about your pilot synopsis, your characters, your breakdowns, and then give an overview of that. And then the other requirements that we're looking for is like you have any kind of a previous work that too. So examples could be your previous examples, could be your short you had done, or pilot you had done, or scripts if you have the sample for that. So that is like the basic. And I will pass it to Caroline. See anything add on that you expect from there?
Sure. So yeah, it's written pretty plainly in the at VAFF.org/development. If you're not looking at that page, then I recommend that you do. If you just go to VAFF.org, I think it's on the front page. So I would say, like, in your 1 to 2 page document, so under B, with your synopsis and your breakdowns, when we say 1 to 2 pages, I guess, what am I trying to say? Like, it's not a ton of space, but if you're kind of using like, size 11 font and you're filling up those pages, like, just make sure that you really, you've had friends read it over and that it feels like really concise. It's not a lot of space, but I think most people should be able to get their series concept and idea down in that amount of space. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, 1 to 2 pages, but I would definitely make sure that it's really exemplifies what the tone and feel of your show is in that text. Yeah, because we really want to get to know your characters, and just make sure that we can feel what they're really like as well in your character breakdowns, and that it really feels like a character-driven story. Again, if you're pitching for Crave, which I am going to assume that most of you are. So yeah, and also I would make sure to include, if you can, just a little bit about format. So say it's like, oh yeah, this is a comedy, it's a 30-minute family comedy, or it's a 1 hour serialized drama, 1 hour by 60 minutes, just make sure that information is really clear at the top of your, of that 1 to 2 page document. And so I guess if you have a pilot, then maybe you don't need to emphasize so much on that 1 to 2 page document. Like, maybe oftentimes, like, we turn to that pilot and hope that pilot really speaks for itself. If it's not a pilot, then it's a really, really detailed. Then if you don't have a pilot, then a very, very detailed outline. If you don't have a very, very detailed outline, but you have a really, really great idea that you've been working on, and you can put in 1 to 2 pages, we have that, and then we can see a good example of your previous works, whether it's a short or a feature that you've worked on. Or by worked on, I mean either wrote or directed. Or you have a really great writing sample. Writing samples are also just really great to have. So I mean, less of an emphasis on like specs. We don't see as many specs in Canada as writing samples. So, I mean, regardless, if your writing sample just is, maybe if it's a short film, like that could work, like an unproduced short film, that could work really well. An unproduced short film, really great piece of writing, but then also a really great idea in your 1 to 2 page document, yeah, those are kind of your options there. So it is kind of flexible. You could, for anyone here who's made a short, you submit your short, your 1 to 2 page document, and your resume and bio, then you're kind of good to go. So coming back to your question, how does VAFF dev program define limited series? 1 season with 10 episodes, or it could be 3-part with 6 episodes. 3, yeah. I mean, we go by episodes, so say 6 episodes, 8 episodes, 10 episodes. Those are kind of maybe 3 parts. Like, sure, like if you wanted to break it up across 3 parts over 6 episodes, like if that feels right, that's all fine. All of those are acceptable for us. Yeah. Any advantages or disadvantages between submitting a completed short versus a pilot script? I would say that my personal preference is to see a pilot. Though it's a tall order, I guess it's really what brings your best creative. If you can get a really, really solid 1 to 2 page document done, but you don't have enough time to put together a solid pilot, then I would do and your short is a really good representation of your work and feels quite polished. If your short feels really polished and you don't have enough time to put together a full pilot, then yeah, it's really just about what you have time for. I would say that most optimally, yeah, it is a great pilot, and if not a great pilot, then a totally great outline. A lot of times a really, really great outline can work just as well as a really great pilot, actually. So if you're less that dialogue-driven writer and more plot-driven writer, or you just don't have enough time to write all of the dialogue, then you'd rather just write a really detailed outline. You can write that outline in Final Draft or in whatever screenwriting software you have. I didn't even fully understand the different formats of outlines before I had this job. But now I'm seeing that more often that outlines are written in that kind of script format, just without dialogue. That's kind of all it is. It's just really chunky scene descriptions. Yeah, so a really detailed outline can sometimes really do the trick, especially, I would say, more for dramas. For comedies, would be great to hear the characters' voices. And if you don't have so I would say if we can hear the characters' voices in a pilot, that would be great. Yeah, I would say really leaning towards having a pilot for comedies, but for dramas, there's a little bit more leeway. Asian Canadianism, would setting be occurs even from an animated series? From an animated series perspective, no, I don't think that it matters so much in animation. I think there's a lot more leeway there, though again, we would definitely ask why us. So maybe if tonally there's just something kind of Canadian about within, I don't know, about those storylines, maybe stuff about multiculturalism or whatever, that could definitely be seen as Canadian, because again, all we do is we really ask ourselves why us. But for live action, definitely I would definitely encourage to set it in Canada. Yeah. 3 parts as in seasons with 6 episodes. Oh, I see what you mean. So a limited. Oh, okay. Yeah, we would say a season, limited as in like I mentioned, if that a limited series is in just Top and Tail with 1 season. So we would go by 1 season with 6 episodes would probably be the shortest that we would do in 1 season. So that would be a 6-part limited series, 1 season, with 6 parts, 6 episodes. I don't know. The lingo really depends on who you ask.
Yeah. So we went through 45 minutes with a lot of questions. That's amazing. That's fly by. So That's great. And then, we just want to go through like couple of the like basic, what we're looking for these applicants, right?
Sure.
So is at least one of the member from your creative team is Asian or part Asian heritage, and that's pretty much is all a cause of our festival submission as well. And then also one of those characters in the story that you're writing also Asian and part Asian. That is the requirement. And then I mentioned it before, residents of Canada, and we talk about the why we want to do the use the Asian Canadian story and Canadian talent. So we understand that. It's pretty straightforward with that. And so and the application for is be clear is TV projects, right, with Crave, and more obvious for that. And so the what else? I think we answer a fair bit of question. Hopefully, we answer all the audience that they are looking for. Hopefully, they get ready. And then, like what you mentioned before, the 2 pages, really straightforward, get to the point, and then you kind of help you to stand out with your story. And so some examples. And last but not least, definitely remember the due date is February 28th. At the PST time, 11:59. So that means the East Coast folks, they get a little bit more leeway for that. So, and that's pretty much all for this programs and that. And as we mentioned it before, we're now currently we will have the final 2 recipients. They will receive this funding. Each of them will receive $7,500 for the development fund to then move forward for the next step with Bell Media. So let's see any other question out there.
There's one question about accepting pictures from co-directors, one Asian and one non-Asian. I don't like, this is a writer producer type of I don't personally work with directors as somebody who works so much in development. So if you're talking about writers, then as in one of the co-writers is not Asian, I think that we are open to that. I don't remember, Regina.
Well, that is what we are applicants, as long as you have one member of the creative team, which is our creative team is such as writer, producer, director, one of them that can be self-identify as Asian or part Asian heritage. So that sort of answer your question, Josh.
Great. Question about, does feasibility budget-wise make a difference? Contemporary stories are a lot easier to film than historical fantasy. Yeah, this is a great question. I mean, yeah, part of the reason that we don't do so much so many period dramas is because they are kind of expensive. But other than that, no, we really don't want, we get a lot of sci-fi pitches, right? And sci-fi can have a lot of VFX and whatever. We really don't want folks to be hindered by, I don't want you to be producing while you're writing, if that makes sense. We have in Canada, we have a lot of writers who have really, really strong, also happen to have really strong producing skills, also know how they're writing, and they're oh, I know how much this is going to cost, so they're self-editing while they're writing. And sometimes it really, really hinders the quality of the writing, because you're oh, I'm not going to do this ambitious thing. But we really just want, we try to remove all of those barriers from our writers, because that's kind of the magic of development. When it comes down time to go to production, then we can have conversations about, oh, this is going to be too expensive, this is whatever. But generally, we try not to hinder that in development, and just try and get all the best writing possible on the page. That's really our number one priority. Yeah. And I was going to just say something else about your document. So if you're submitting, if any of you have a short, you want to submit your short as your previous work in just the 1 to 2 page document, I just want to also say, like, sometimes people get really caught up thinking about how that document is going to look visually. You could spend a lot of time in Canva, or you could hire a graphic designer and do like a really great kind of like visual treatment to that document. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it does help for sure, like for stuff that's a little bit more visual, like again, like sci-fi or genre. Sometimes it really can be very effective, but other times it may not be. Like I would really sometimes a strict Word document with really, really strong writing can stand out for sure in a very like new and interesting idea. So I just wanted to make that really clear, just not to worry too much about like how your document looks. And like if you're spending like a lot of time kind of on that document, on working on how it looks, you could totally have spent that time on your pilot. So I would totally dedicate, like, if you can make a really great pilot between now and the deadline, I would totally do that. Like I don't know what kind of jobs you guys have, and like I don't want to assume that you could do that, but if you're planning on allotting a good chunk of time to this application, I would try and do what you can to spend that time on a pilot. Question for stipulations on how the $7,500 can be spent in development. No, no, it's going towards you, the writer. So, like, not as far as I know. Regina, do you know if?
Nope, it was not
No, it's no. We don't really have anything like that. Yeah. Great. This is just a development, not related to production, so do not understand why period pieces are being stifled even before they're able to take root. So we're doing this program because we just want to also make sure that people across the country know what our programming needs are, because they are always changing. Like I had mentioned to you at the beginning, or I mentioned to you a few times now, that we have a preference for comedies. Like that's very new. We have never kind of come out saying we really want comedies ever before. I guess maybe not ever before, but since I started working, we haven't said that. And that's because of the evolving nature of our programming strategy. So, and the people who decide what works well on programming is like a whole other team that does that. They look at the ratings, they look at what does well on CTV, they look at what does well on Crave, what's getting a lot of clicks on HBO, what's getting, on HBO Max and our partners in HBO Max. So, I can't, I don't have an answer as to why we're not doing period stuff as much. And again, like I mentioned earlier, like not saying do not pitch period stuff, like would love to hear, still down to hear your period pitches. Like if it's a really good story, then like absolutely want to hear it. Will not say no in any way. We just don't have, I just wanted to, it's more of like kind of like a tip that we don't do as many YA, we don't do as many period, we don't do as many sketch comedy. I just don't see as much success with those down the line internally. So, but absolutely, we take all of these pitches, super open to them, and a great story, will stand out. But that's kind of like, it's just a reflection of our programming strategy. Cool. Yes, absolutely down to do Zoom chats. As long as you can just be a little bit patient with my turnaround time in terms of emailing, but generally, yes, super down. Do you need to submit a pilot script as a writing sample? I understood the development would go towards writing the first and second drafts. So this is a great question. So this is it's a common question. So what happens in development is that we do develop a pilot. So, but the pilot goes through multiple drafts. So what you're bringing to us, the more polished it is, maybe it's so polished that we don't even, maybe we do like one draft of the pilot in development, but we focus on like the next episode, or we focus on a Bible. or you focus on the next episode's outline, you know, if your pilot is really polished. Even from the most experienced writers in this country, a lot of times the pilots they give us at that first pitch stage are not super polished. So you might think that your pilot is like really ready to go, but you know, there's multiple rounds of drafts that the network will go through with you when you're in development with us, because we of course want to put our own stamp on all of our projects and make sure because we want to claim them as Crave originals or CTV originals. So it's a really good question, because I was very confused about this at the beginning when I started my job too. I was like, why are we taking pilots when we develop pilots? Anyways, so really like the pilot is kind of a writing sample, and it's just the case, especially with comedies, that it's so hard to get a good sense of which comedies to put through to development when they don't have a pilot, and then we don't really have a sense of what their characters' voices are. And so I even tell them, like, I rarely see, I mean, sometimes like you see a pitch deck with like where they do a really good job showing their characters' voices in a pitch deck. It does happen very, very rarely. Very, very rarely. Usually we'll go off of that pilot. And when we see a really great pilot, then we will want to put it through development and just continue working on that polish. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We really went by.
Yeah. I can go on and on, let me tell
That's
you.
great. I mean, I'm quite happy that we answered some questions.
More questions. Yes, we have a few minutes left.
A few minutes to take a few more questions.
Sure.
For sure.
Or once a script is picked as the winner, do we own the IP? We do for the duration. If you don't have a producer attached, like if you have a producer attached, then that producer would be the owner of that IP, and we would take you as a team. But if you don't have a producer attached, then it's a writer only. It's just like literally just you, the writer, or you, the co-writers. Then we would own the IP for the duration of the development. And if we don't go through production, then we release the IP back to you. And then if we do go through to production, then we would get production companies on board. And I'm pretty sure we would release the IP back to the production companies at that point. Yeah, all of that would be hammered out at that point. Yeah.
Okay, let's see any other questions.
Last call.
No, last call. But anyway, so we also put down Caroline's email at the comment box. So, and also feel free to also email to us, and then we'll also forward her email to you guys. So, like to contact us, as we mentioned, it's on our website, VAFF.org, development, and then there's an email address there, is the development@VAFF.org. So you can feel free to email us, and then we can answer all your questions, and anything that we can also pass along to Caroline. So
yeah,
there's one more question.
One more question.
All right. Okay.
Okay. You want to pitch an anthology house? Is it better to do an outline of a few episodes to convey tone? Yes, I think like in your 1 to 2 page document where you're doing kind of a season overview, then you'd want your season overview to be a little bit more detailed maybe, and just make sure that it feels really, really solid. Yeah. Outline of a few. So you kind of like, I would say like, maybe instead of using the word outline, I would say like your season overview would have a synopsis per, maybe like a couple synopses of a few episodes. And then if you wanted to, for part C of the application, then, you know, you could do an outline of your pilot, like a fuller outline of your pilot, or pilot, or any of the other options there. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Would writers have agency to eventually become showrunners if they so desired? Very big question. It depends. I would say we do like to bring on, I mean, it depends. It depends on if you have showrunning experience, then yeah, absolutely. It depends on who the team is. that you would bring on at that point, and like if we are partnering with you, then we'll all come together to decide who the best team would be moving into production. So I guess that transition from it's usually like, I'll be honest, like it's usually, you come in as like a story coordinator, and then like a junior writer, and then like a more staff writer, and then like a senior writer. There's like story editors also in there, and it takes a number of years kind of in that mix to get a lot of writing room experience and make sure you're on a lot of different shows before folks can, or you have a lot of feature experience before moving into like a showrunner position. That's kind of how it works. Unfortunately, it's not the most accessible system. I'm not the most pleased about it, but that is how it is. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Great.
Okay.
Wow.
There
We
you go.
definitely go for a whole hour. And
yes,
definitely. Thank you, Caroline.
Absolutely.
They are at the East Coast in Toronto and State. So we don't want to keep Caroline for too long with that here. But like what I mentioned, feel free to send us any email, development@vaff.org, and then we will either forward the questions to Caroline, or we also will try to answer whatever questions that you have. So now we are pretty much just like a month and a half away. Get ready, get your documents, get your information. The deadline, the due date is February 28th. So, and that's best of luck with everyone. So thank you so much, Caroline.
For sure.
Yeah,
happy to see some familiar names in the chat from folks I met at VAFF. Good to see you again, and I hope that you take care and best of luck on your application. And don't hesitate to reach out. And happy to have a Zoom chat anytime. So thank you so much for hosting this, Regina. It was totally a blast, and I'm looking forward to reading everyone's stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
Quite exciting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay. So before we go, I would just like to announce like a few more exciting things that we have. So if you guys also like this session, we have another sessions coming up on January 29th, the end of this month. It's 12:30 p.m. Saturday PST time. It's a mentorship, Ask Me Anything. So it's with one of the industry professionals, 𝗖𝗿_𝗏 from Bright Light Pictures. So he will share some tips and tricks about a TV serial development. All right. So mark your calendar for that date. Okay. And so the other thing is we're presenting this movie. It's called The Fabulous Filipino Brother. It's on this Saturday on 1:30 p.m. This is the Canadian premiere, one day only in theater, because they're going on tour from US to Canada, and that's the only time that they are doing in theater. So it's at the Cineplex Oden International Village, and so join us, and you'll meet the cast and crew. And Dante Basco will be doing the Q&A panel. So last thing that we also want to mention is one of our partners that we have with them is the Canada Independent Screen Fund. And so let me show you this. So that's a sessions coming out. It's a business affairs lead by doing series with this. So go to their website and check out more details, and then they will the application you need to apply is by 20th. So it's coming up around the corner. And this is give you more information about the industry and give you some more learning experience of that. So learn more about us at vaff.org and follow us at VAFF Vancouver on our social media channels. So, and enjoy, and hopefully we'll see you all soon in person, and take care. See you next time.